What are we talking about tonight? Nouns. And a noun is a person, place, or thing. You guys are ready for school. At least English you should be good at day one. I know what a noun is. My pastor beat it to death all summer long. All right, so a noun is a person, a place, or a thing. Now, we talked about some places and we talked about some things, and lately we've been talking about a person named Elijah. Right. We're talking about Elijah, and we find his story in 1 Kings 17. So that's where we're going to head tonight. When you get a page number, shout out so the rest of us can join you. All right, so when we last left Elijah, if you were here last week, we were hanging with Elijah, who was hanging where? Anybody remember? All right, let's back up further. Do you remember what Elijah had done? Elijah walked large and in charge to Ahab's court and what? All right, he said it's not going to rain until he says it is. All right, do I get a 193? Is that what I hear? 1 Kings 17. 180 if you're in a Pew Bible. All right, so he told Ahab, who was the king of Israel, who was a wicked king, he said, you think you're in charge, but I am the servant of God, and I'm going to tell you that it's not going to rain again until I say it is, and I'm not going to say it's going to rain again until God says it is. And so he walked out of Ahab's court, and God said, okay, Elijah, you just delivered a very dangerous message to a very dangerous man. I want you to head east, and I want you to go to the brook Cherith, and I will keep you there, and I will provide for you. And so Elijah runs off out of Israel now, across the Jordan River, heading east into the mountains that feed the Jordan River, and he goes out there and he finds this brook Cherith. And he sits there and he's drinking water from the brook, and twice a day, in the morning and again in the evening, ravens stop by carrying lunch. Now, I don't know what McRaven looks like, but that's what God's doing. And so that's where we left Elijah. Now, Elijah knows that the famine is going to be for a while, but he doesn't know when. He doesn't know how long it's going to be any more than anybody else does. He just knows God, and he knows God knows when it's going to get over. So he's hanging out by this brook. He's drinking the water from the brook. He's eating McRaven, whatever they happen to bring. And so things are good. And he probably anticipates that he's going to be hanging out at this brook for the entirety of the famine, right? Because, why would you go anywhere else? You've got water, you've got food. If you move, maybe the ravens don't know your new address. And you know how that is when you order pizza and they don't know where you live and you get free pizza because it takes too long. But you just don't want to risk that in the middle of a famine. What's a famine? Well, technically no rain is a drought. But droughts cause famine, which is no produce, right? So they kind of go hand in hand. No rain is a drought. Famine is no crops. And they do go together because if you don't have any water, you're not getting anything out of the crack-parched soil. And so they work well together. You could think of them synonymously. They are a little bit different. So here is Elijah. He's sitting by the brook. He's eating McRaven. He's drinking water. And he's thinking everything is cool. And I'm going to spend the rest of the famine here, however that happens to be, however long that happens to be. But did it work that way? Not exactly. So let's get to verse 7 of 1 Kings 17. If you hear me say 1 Corinthians, since I seem to be just trying to say 1 Corinthians, just translate that as 1 Kings, because I'm not going anywhere near Corinthians tonight. 1 King.
I was in the 1 Kings first page. I didn't hear.
Oh, okay. So 193 is your page number. Thank you for clarification. 1 Kings 17, verse 7. Here was the surprise that Elijah got. And it happened after a while. How long?
After a while.
How long's a while?
A while.
It's shorter than a little bit of time. It's not quite as a long time. It's just kind of a while. So longer than an hour. After a while, probably, after a while, that the brook, what happened? The brook dried up because there had been no rain in the land. Thank you, author. How many of you figured out for yourself that when there is no rain, the little brooks that run down the mountains and feed into the Jordan River are probably going to dry up? So, the brook had dried up because there had been no rain. I figured that part out all by myself. So here's Elijah. He's sitting there. He wakes up in the morning, goes to get his morning cup of water out of the brook, and he's got a cup of dirt because there's no brook. Cup of dirt. It's like a cup of Joe, but without the liquid. And so I am sure that Elijah was like, God? Hello, God, are you there? Because it's not like he had a cell phone or anything. He just kind of talked up and hoped. God, problem, McRaven, thank you, but I needed a drink with McRaven this morning. And so God had a plan for Elijah. Because here's the thing, if you remember last week, we said that God told Elijah to deliver a message, and then he would take care of Elijah's needs. And the application for us is God gives us a mission. God gives us a message that he wants us to share, and he's promised to take care of our needs. But he didn't promise Elijah that there wouldn't be any surprises. He didn't say you're going to stay by the brook Cherith forever. He didn't say there won't be a little bit of surprises. Didn't say there wouldn't be a little interruption in service. He just said, I will provide for your needs. Surprise! I'm still going to provide for your needs, but it's going to be a little different than you expected. Have you ever experienced something like that? You serve God, he says, I'm going to provide for your needs. He's providing for them one way, and then all of a sudden he shifts gears. Does it take us a while, like we need a clutch? Right, he shifts gears, and you're like all of a sudden, God, but you said you're going to provide. And God's like, yeah, I'm going to, but you're going to have to go over here now. You ever been like that? Suddenly, God's providing for your needs, but he's going to change how he's going to do it. And that's what we're going to find in Elijah's life. God is still going to provide for his needs exactly the same way he said he was, but he was going to do it in a different manner. Because God had a plan for Elijah's life that enabled him to actually serve somebody else while God was providing for his needs. And so that's where we find today as we keep reading. So we pick up in verse 8. He's going to help somebody else who needs help, even though he is himself in a position where he needs help. But look at this in verse 8. Then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, Arise, go to Zarephath. Where's Zarephath? Which belongs to Sidon. Now, Sidon is a coastal city just above Israel. Our city is called Tyre, and Sidon above that. Zarephath is on the south side of Sidon, kind of in between them, just in case you wanted to know where it was. Arise, go to Zarephath, which belongs to Sidon, and dwell there. See, I have commanded a widow there to provide for you. So he arose and he went to Zarephath. And when he came to the gate of the city, indeed a widow was there gathering sticks. And he called to her and said, Please bring me a little water in a cup that I may drink. McRaven came without water today. Can you please get me a drink? Now, it was probably longer than a day, because going from the east side of the Jordan where Elijah had been to all the way around the northern side of Israel over to the Sea of Galilee, it was a lengthy walk. I'm sure God provided water along the way, but he gets to his destination and he is parched, because the whole landscape is parched. And so God said, look, I have a widow there who's going to help you. And so Elijah gets there, he gets to the gate, there's some woman out collecting sticks, and he goes, Hey, widow woman! Well, he said something kind of like that. Probably did one of these. Hey, widow! I know you hear me. Those are funny videos, aren't they? Yes. I'm going to do it again, because I watch them at home. I just love them. So anyway, how does Elijah know that that's a widow? Let's think about this now. How many of you have heard this story before? Some of you have? Good grief in the morning. That's it? All right. How many of you just don't want to, you didn't wear deodorant, so you don't lift your arms? All right, so here's Elijah. He goes out there. How does Elijah know that this is a widow woman? We're not told this. So I'm going to take my best guess. My best guess is, because can you tell a widow from another person who's not widowed? No. Unless she happens to be wearing mourning clothes. Many cultures, when somebody is, bug flew into my ear. Sorry. Many cultures, when somebody has a spouse die, the surviving spouse will wear clothing, mourning clothes, that lets everybody know, I'm in mourning. Do we have that culture in our tradition? Or do we have that culture in our, do we have that tradition in our culture? I'll get this straight. Yeah. We do. We don't wear them for very long, but usually for like the first couple days, you've never gone to a funeral in pink, I trust. Right? What color do you wear to funerals? Black or dark, right? And so we have this kind of tradition actually survives into our own day, that there are clothes that are appropriate for mourning. Now, in this culture, she would have worn them for a lot longer, a period of months. And so here's Elijah. He rolls up on Zarephath, and there's a woman who is very clearly a widow. She's wearing mourning garments, and so he knows, like, God sent her out at the right time so he didn't have to, knock on every door in Zarephath going, "Are you a widow? Are you a widow?" I mean, talk about awkward. And so he's able to identify her very rapidly. And so he goes out and he says, "Hey, I'm thirsty. Can you provide for me? Can you get for me a cup of water?" And so, here you have a person in Elijah who is thirsty, who God is providing for, who has needs. Kind of didn't expect to be in this place because God said, "I was going to take care of your needs. Here's the brook Cherith. It's got water." And he meets this widow lady who is recently widowed. And so he is now engaging with this lady who is herself having a place where she is in a tremendous amount of need and unexpected need. You think about it, when somebody dies, especially if you're in a male-dominated culture, the husband he's working, he's paying the bills, he's doing whatever all the dads do, and she's going through life, raising the kids and all this, and all of a sudden she's got to provide for the entire family. So she is facing an unexpected need herself, and then you add to this little surprise of a famine and a drought, and things are even worse for her. And now all of a sudden she's got a prophet who's saying, "Hey, can you give me a drink?" And oh, by the way, it gets better for her. Verse 11, as she was going to get it, she had some water. He called to her and said, "Please bring me a morsel of bread. Hey, I'm hungry. Can you feed me too?" And so she said, "As the Lord your God lives, I do not have bread. Only a handful of flour in a bin and a little oil in a jar. And see, I am gathering a couple of sticks that I may go in and prepare it for myself and my son, that we may eat it and celebrate." What does it say? We may eat it and die. This is my last meal, and it ain't that great. I'm going to make bread. And this isn't like, Wonder Bread. This is like pita bread, just so we clear on, kind of bread she's getting ready to make. This is more like a flour, tortilla than it is a loaf of bread. And so she said, "I got just this little bit." She knew exactly how much bread she had, how much bread she could make. And so here's now Elijah, the prophet of God, going, "Hey, get me a drink, and while you're getting me a drink, can you make me some bread?" What do you think her response was? Don't read ahead. No. Yeah. What would your response have been? No, which part of "I'm going to eat this last meal and die" didn't translate for you? My response would be, you have to like the work. Right. You're a dude in a dude world. Figure it out. We don't know specifically what her thought process was. She was no doubt in a very desperate situation, but we do know what her response to Elijah's instructions were, though they were odd. We find it in verse 13. We continue on. Elijah says to her, "Do not fear." So she was afraid of dying, starving to death. Not probably a pleasant way to go. "But make a small cake from it first." Again, cake, not birthday cake, pita bread cake. "And bring it to me. And afterward," like when you've taken care of me, "make some for yourself and for your son. For thus says the Lord God of Israel," and this is important, "the bin of flour shall not be used up, nor shall the jar of oil run dry until the Lord sends rain on the earth." All right, widow lady. They should give us a name. But the widow of Zarephath, call her Zeri. She was scary, or scared. And Elijah says, "Don't be scared. Go, make the bread for me. And here's what God has said. God has said that that flour is never going to run out until there's rain. And that oil is never going to run out until there's rain. We call that a miracle, because that doesn't happen every day. You know, when you get to the end of the bag of flour, it's game over. You've got to go buy a new bag of flour. You know, if you've got a bottle of olive oil, you get to the bottom of olive oil, guess what happens next? You throw it in the recycling bin. Right? Because And God said, nope. Elijah said, nope, not going to run out. God is going to take care of that. Odd? I mean, her day is just going from weird to strange. I mean, it's accelerating into the bizarre. But her decision was pretty simple, I guess, for her. Not so much for me. So she went away and did according to the words of Elijah. Okay, that's what God said. That's what we'll do. And she and her household ate for a few days. Many days. Okay, you feel free to correct as I go. The bin of flour was not used up, nor did the jar of oil run dry, according to the word of the Lord, which he spoke by Elijah. Very cool. I mean, this is the bottomless bread basket that you hope for at a restaurant. And so you have Elijah, who was surprised with hardship, but through it, God enabled him to serve someone else who was in need. Interestingly enough, the same is true of the widow. She was surprised by hardship, but through it, God enabled her to serve someone else. Are we going to face difficulties in life? Yeah? You think so? Life gets hard. Adults, we can vouch for that, yeah? What is our tendency when we face hardships? Our tendency is to focus on ourselves and meeting our needs, right? We get incredibly selfish when we're facing real hardship. I have needs. I'm needy. Let me be. Right? It's just how we roll. That's human nature. But for the child of God, when we are in a time of need, it's not the time to get selfish. Did God promise to meet our needs? Yes, he has, and he does, and he will. So if we're in a position where we're facing hardship and we're facing need, but God has already promised to meet our needs, do we need to focus on us? Or can we find somebody else that we can serve even though we're in a place of need? I think the answer is yes. That as a child of God who has the promise of God of provision, when even though we have a need, we can go out and we can find somebody and we can serve them, help meet their needs, knowing that God is going to meet our needs. And maybe, just maybe, in a serendipitous kind of way, God will use the person that we're serving to meet a need that we have as he takes care of the whole thing. Because that's how God works. Very cool. That he would allow us the joy of serving and let him take care of the details. So when you have a time of need, you have a time of hardship, you get selfish, right? That's my advice? No. Don't get selfish. Get serving. Go help someone else. Father, help us to heed your word. Help us to serve others, even when our life seems difficult, knowing that you have promised to provide and you never break your promise. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right.